Imagine staring at a blank screen. Like you know exactly what you want to say. The argument is right there in your head, fully formed.
Oh, I know this feeling.
Right. But then you rewrite the first paragraph 4 times.
Yeah.
And it's just absolute garbage. We have totally all been there.
Yeah, way too many times.
But what happens when the tool you use to fix it doesn't just hand you the answer? Like what if instead it asks you a question that just cracks your brain wide open?
That is the million-dollar question right now.
It really is.
Ugh.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are exploring a quiet but honestly massive revolution that's happening inside your head right now.
A literal rewiring of the brain.
Exactly. We're looking at a brand new long-form essay published today, June 2, 2026. It's in Tech Reader magazine, written by Aaron Rose, and it's called The Great Cognitive Shift.
It's a fantastic piece.
So our mission today is to figure out how artificial intelligence is fundamentally changing not just the facts we have access to, but the way our brains actually process and frame thoughts.
Which brings us right back to that blank screen you mentioned. 'Cause Aaron Rose actually opens his piece describing that exact scenario.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was stuck on a draft, getting increasingly frustrated, right? And finally, he brought his problem to an AI assistant. But, and this is key, he didn't just paste his messy text and say, rewrite this for me.
Okay, so what did he do?
He described the underlying problem he was trying to solve with his opening argument. And the AI did not give him a solution. It didn't write a single sentence of prose.
Wait, just refuse.
Not refuse, but instead it returned a set of questions interrogating his underlying assumptions, like questions he just hadn't thought to ask himself.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of those questions shifted his entire perspective. He went back to the draft and finished it in 20 minutes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because his reaction to that specific interaction is, it's the whole reason we're talking today. He didn't just feel relieved. He felt deeply unsettled by it. Because the AI didn't do anything magical, The questions it asked were things he probably would have figured out himself after another 2 hours of agonizing over his keyboard.
Exactly, just staring at a blinking cursor.
Yeah. But what unsettled him was that the AI essentially participated in the movement of his thought. It radically compressed the time between his confusion and his clarity.
That compression is everything.
Think about it like this. Imagine you're building a crooked shelf. You ask a friend to hand you a hammer to just, force a nail in and make it work.
Just muscle it in.
Right. But instead of handing you the hammer, your friend hands you a level and asks, hey, are you sure the floor itself isn't slanted?
That is such a perfect analogy.
It's an entirely different kind of relationship with a tool. It shifts your perspective rather than just being a blunt instrument that executes a task.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to really grasp why that interaction feels so structurally different, we have to look backward. We need to examine the historical pattern of what cognitive tools have always done to human minds.
Okay, like what?
Well, every major tool humanity has ever invented changes what the human mind needs to hold. And by changing what the mind holds, it literally changes the mind itself.
Right.
But because we live through these transitions day by day, the changes feel invisible to us.
If you think about it, we have actually panicked about this exact thing before. Like, go all the way back to the invention of written language.
Oh, sure.
Before writing, knowledge had to survive inside a living human body.
Mm-hmm.
The elders in a community were the literal walking archives of their society.
Seasonal wisdom, genealogies, medicinal recipes, all of it.
Right, all carried in the mind and spoken aloud. Writing completely shattered that limitation. Knowledge could finally leave the body. But Socrates actually watched writing spread through ancient Athens, and he was terrified by it.
Wait, Socrates hated writing.
He really did. He argued that if you could just write something down, you no longer had to truly hold it inside you. He viewed the externalization of memory as the beginning of its atrophy, like the death of deep knowledge.
That makes a lot of sense, honestly. He was recognizing a real cognitive trade-off. Certain types of monumental memory did atrophy.
Yeah, they had to.
Fast forward a few thousand years, and we see the exact same panic cycle repeat with the pocket calculator.
Oh, I remember hearing about this. The huge classroom panic.
Total panic. Critics were convinced that children would completely lose the ability to do basic arithmetic. And, to an extent, certain mental computational habits did weaken.
Right. People don't do long division in their heads much anymore.
Exactly. But look at the other side of that coin. Students who grew up with calculators were suddenly freed from all that tedious mechanical labor.
So they could focus on other things.
Yes, they suddenly had the cognitive space to develop higher-order mathematical reasoning. They learned estimation, that intuitive ability to know whether an answer is logically plausible before you even verify it.
That trade-off concept brings us to a much more modern, measurable example, and honestly, this completely blew my mind. GPS.
Oh, the taxi driver study.
Yes. We actually have modern neuroscience to track this cognitive trait in real time. There are studies focusing on taxi drivers in major cities, like London cabbies, before and after GPS became the standard.
Because they have to pass that insane test, right? The knowledge.
Exactly, memorizing thousands of intertwining streets. They found literal, measurable physical changes in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain involved in spatial navigation.
So their brains were physically different.
Yeah, your brain is incredibly efficient. When it realizes it no longer needs to build and maintain these complex internal maps, it just stops investing biological resources into that architecture. So a classic London cabbie had a genuinely different physical brain structure compared to a modern driver who just, follows a glowing blue line on a dashboard.
The underlying mechanism there is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
The brain just prunes what it doesn't use. And that physical brain difference really forces us to ask what navigation is actually for.
What do you mean?
Well, if you believe navigation is purely a matter of utility, just getting a vehicle from point A to point B with maximum efficiency, then GPS is an unambiguous triumph.
Sure, it gets you there faster.
But if navigation is fundamentally about developing an embodied, felt understanding of your environment, a spatial intuition that lets you improvise and understand the city as a living organism, then outsourcing that to a screen represents a profound loss.
I hear that, but I got to push back here. Are we just being nostalgic for the hard way of doing things?
How so?
Let's be brutally honest. If you were late for a critical job interview across town, you do not need a deep, embodied, poetic connection to the city streets. You just need to get there before the hiring manager leaves.
That's a fair point.
Right. Isn't shedding these old, heavy cognitive burdens a pure upgrade for the average user?
Efficiency is undeniably valuable when the goal is purely logistical. The friction comes when we apply that exact same expectation of effortless efficiency to deep intellectual work.
Ah, okay. I see the distinction.
Physical transit is one thing, but the journey of a thought is another. Which brings us to the internet era and how it completely rewired our brains to set the stage for ChatGPT.
Right, the era of Wikipedia and smartphones.
Yeah, think about that first phase of the digital revolution.
Aaron Rose calls it the era of the pointer. When you got your first smartphone, you suddenly had access to nearly all human knowledge right in your pocket.
Instantly.
The assumption that any fact was just 3 seconds away totally changed how we stored information. The blank space in your mind where a specific fact used to live, like the capital of a country or a movie's release year, was quietly replaced by a mental pointer.
A pointer to the server.
Right. Humanity didn't stop knowing things. We just stopped remembering the facts themselves and started remembering where intelligence lives. We outsourced the storage.
Exactly. But we need to look closely at the cognitive mechanism of a search engine. When you use Google, the underlying operation is still purely retrieval.
Right. It just finds things.
Yes, it indexes billions of pages by keywords. When you ask a question, it retrieves a list of sources. But you, the human, are the one who has to open those links, read the conflicting information, find the pattern, and synthesize an answer.
So the human is still doing all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. In that dynamic, the human is the only entity in the room doing anything resembling reasoning.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When ChatGPT hit the scene, and by the way, it reached 100 million users in 2 months, which is faster than the smartphone or the internet itself.
Which is just staggering.
Unbelievable. But it completely shattered that retrieval paradigm. It shifted the entire operation from retrieval to synthesis.
Right. It's not looking things up, it's creating.
Think of it like this. Using a search engine is like wandering through a massive library with only a card catalog. You still have to go find the books and read them.
Yeah.
Using this new AI is like having a world-class subject matter expert sitting at the desk with you, reading your notes, answering questions, and actively brainstorming the connections you are missing.
What's fascinating here is how that perfectly illustrates the leap. Because large language models synthesize rather than just retrieve, they adapt to the specific shape of the user's question.
So they tailor the answer to you.
Let's look at how this changes the texture of learning. Imagine you're a student starting a research paper on the Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
In the old days, you faced a cold choice between a dry encyclopedia entry or sifting through a massive search results page. Today, that student opens a conversation.
They just start talking to it.
Yeah. She can explain what she already understands, point out exactly where she is confused, and ask the highly specific question.
Like what kind of question?
For example, she might ask why the enclosure movement, which was when wealthy lords fenced off public farming land, and the invention of the steam engine happened to arrive in the exact same century.
And the AI doesn't just give her a link to a Wikipedia page on farming.
No, not at all.
It actually synthesizes the argument. It explains how fencing off the land forced poor farmers to migrate into the cities, which provided the cheap labor needed to run the new steam-powered factories.
Exactly, connects the dots.
And she can follow that answer with secondary questions.
Yeah.
So 40 minutes later, she emerges not with a disconnected list of dates, but with a shaped, cohesive historical argument.
The time between curiosity and comprehension is just drastically compressed.
It's a massive leap, and it applies to incredibly technical fields just as powerfully.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's say you have a programmer working at midnight and their code crashes.
Yeah.
In the old paradigm, they had to search for the error, scroll through generic forum threads on Stack Overflow, read through answers to slightly different problems, and mentally translate those fixes.
Which is exhausting.
It is. Now, that same programmer takes a highly specific cryptic error code, say an unhandled rejection from an asynchronous callback.
In plain English.
Right, sorry. In plain English, that's what happens when a program asks a server for data, moves on to other tasks, and then crashes because the data never arrived.
Ah, got it.
So the programmer pastes that specific error along with their unique code into the AI chat. The AI responds by starting from their exact situation, rather than browsing generic threads.
But notice what happens when the tool handles the synthesis. It drastically reduces the premium on basic information retrieval.
Because the machine does it instantly.
Right. You no longer get paid just for knowing where to find the answer. And history dictates that whenever a tool reduces the premium on one skill, it inevitably raises the premium on another.
So what are the new skills?
Because the AI is doing the heavy lifting of connecting the dots, it is suddenly elevating a completely different set of deeply human skills.
And these are the skills you, listening right now, really need to be paying attention to. The essay points out 4 specific ones. First is problem framing.
Which is way more than just prompt engineering.
Exactly. It's the philosophical clarity to define a question precisely enough that a useful answer is even possible. Second is judgment.
Evaluating the truth.
Right. Once the AI gives you code or an essay, do you have the independent understanding to evaluate if it's actually correct?
Because it can lie to you.
Totally. Third is taste. Recognizing quality. You can only do that if you've spent years encountering enough human quality to internalize what good actually feels like.
And the fourth.
The most critical one, discernment. The specific ability to notice when fluency is standing in for understanding.
This raises an important question because discernment is the great trap of this era. Large language models are designed to produce text that reads beautifully.
They predict the most statistically likely next word.
Yes, but they have no internal model of truth. The resulting text is incredibly fluent, regardless of whether it is grounded in reality.
Which is what they call hallucinations.
Exactly. When an AI confidently fabricates a fact, a legal precedent, or a historical event, it does so with perfect grammar and unshakable confidence.
It sounds so convincing.
If you lack discernment, you aren't just getting a bad piece of information. You are slowly developing pervasive habits of credulity.
You're training yourself to trust it.
Blindly trust a machine simply because it sounds smart.
Which leads us to a massive paradox at the heart of this shift. Using AI skillfully requires the exact cognitive capabilities that undisciplined use of it actively erodes.
It's a vicious cycle.
Think about students who use AI to generate essays. Those assignments aren't there just to produce a document. They are a cognitive workout.
Building the muscles of logic and syntax.
Right. If you use the tool to skip the workout, you are literally sawing off the branch you will eventually need to stand on. You won't have the muscle to control the tool later.
The danger isn't just academic dishonesty. The deeper risk to society is that we begin to mistake the production of a correct answer for the possession of deep understanding. Oh, that's a huge distinction.
Because AI output is so flawless on the surface, the gap between looking like you know what you're talking about and actually knowing it has never been easier to hide.
Anyone can sound like an expert.
Right. A person with a fluent summary cannot extend that knowledge or defend it under a rigorous challenge.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say an AI generates a piece of software code or, I don't know, a legal brief, and it is 100% fluent, bug-free, and factually correct.
Okay.
Does it actually matter to the end user if the person who clicked generate possesses the deep understanding under the hood? Like if the software runs perfectly and the bridge stays up, what is the practical danger of just accepting the correct answer?
It matters intensely because the real world is never static. Systems break, contexts shift.
Things change.
Exactly. An AI generates a perfect answer for the exact parameters you gave it in a specific moment.
Hmm.
But if the person implementing that answer only possesses the fluent summary, they cannot adapt when the environment changes.
So when things go wrong. When the software inevitably breaks 6 months later because of an update the AI didn't anticipate, the person who just pasted the perfect code won't have the foundational architecture in their mind to fix it.
Oh, I see.
Genuine understanding allows for adaptation. Unearned fluency is incredibly fragile. Human judgment remains the non-automatable core of all intellectual work.
So what does this all mean? We are sitting right in the middle of a predictable historical cycle with this technology. We go through 3 distinct phases whenever a mind-altering tool drops.
We've seen this movie before.
We really have. First comes enthusiasm, where society wildly oversees the capability of the tool, claiming it'll solve everything. Then comes alarm,
The backlash.
right, where we wildly overstate the risk, panicking that it will destroy human intelligence entirely. And finally, we reach the long, slow phase of integration.
Integration is the unglamorous generational work. It is the long process where education, medicine, law, and journalism actually figure out what the tool is legitimately good for.
And what we need to protect against it.
Exactly. Written language went through this. Search engines went through this. Eventually, the alarm fades, new institutional habits settle, and the next generation grows up completely unable to imagine how we ever lived without it.
But Aaron Rose points out that the cost of this particular integration might be higher than we realize. He thinks back to his own experience writing the essay, and he admits that compressing his confusion into clarity was valuable.
It saved him hours.
It did. But he also recognizes that in the past, when he forced himself to sit alone in a room with a failing draft, wrestling with the words, something vital happened inside that frustration.
A deeper engagement.
Yeah, engagement that often only develops under the pressure of feeling stuck. If we completely eliminate the space between confusion and clarity, we might be risking a profound loss of human creativity and resilience.
Which is exactly why he ends his essay with a powerful call to action. We cannot afford to be passive right now. We have to actively preserve the practices that AI makes it so incredibly tempting to skip.
Like what?
We must fiercely protect close reading, extended argument, and independent reasoning from first principles. As Rose puts it, we have to do the hard thing when the hard thing is the right thing.
Wow.
These aren't just nostalgic virtues. They are the absolute preconditions for using this tool to make yourself more capable, rather than rendering yourself obsolete.
That is the core message for you listening today. This quiet revolution isn't just happening in Silicon Valley boardrooms. It is happening right now, in your life, in the 10,000 daily choices you make.
Every single day.
Every time you face a complex issue, you make a choice. Do I sit with this and think it through alone to build my own cognitive architecture? Or do I immediately open a chat window to relieve the friction?
It is the accumulation of those tiny private choices that will ultimately define the cognitive landscape of the next generation. We are actively deciding what parts of the human mind we are willing to outsource.
I want to leave you with a final, slightly haunting thought to chew on. At the very end of his essay, Rose mentions that his next piece will explore what happens when AI becomes ambient background infrastructure.
Like electricity.
Exactly. Something that began as an absolute marvel, but quickly faded into a baseline assumption of modern life. We just plug into the wall and expect the lights to turn on.
But we don't even think about it.
So mull this over as you go about the rest of your day. If intelligence truly becomes a utility that we simply plug into, just like the power grid, what happens to us when there's a cognitive power outage?
That is a terrifying question.
If we have completely outsourced the friction of thinking, what does our mental resilience look like when we are inevitably forced to navigate the dark completely alone? Will you still know how to swing the hammer, or will you just be looking around for a level?